The Trek Geeks Podcast Network is proud to have Fansets as its presenting sponsor. Fansets is the place for amazing pin collectibles with over 300 officially licensed Star Trek pins and new releases every single month. Stay tuned for a special discount code good on your next order at fansets.com just for Trek Geeks listeners. Fansets. Our pins have character.
This episode is also sponsored by Science Division, the makers of the galaxy's first interactive tribble that you can control with your very own smartphone. Science Division. Trouble's never been this fun.
Hi, this is Alexander Siddiq, Dr. Julian Bashir on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you are listening to the biggest little show this side of the Gamma Quadrant. It's the Trek Geeks Podcast with Bill Smith and Dan Davidson.
From Podfleet Command headquarters in the very frozen northeastern United States. Oof. It's the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant and the flagship of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. Greetings to you, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages, and welcome to the Trek Geeks Podcast in episode number 251. I'm your co-host, Bill Smith. It's so great to have you here as we continue the month of February here on Trek Geeks. And of course, by we, I do mean my co-host and I. You know, after about 250 episodes or so, you run out of ways to introduce somebody. So, Dan, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself this week. Go.
I am the often frowned upon, not attractive, voice spinal column decalcifying co-host Dan Davidson, and it's great to be here, buddy, because you are the epitome of what a podcast is supposed to be all about. So thank you.
That also is the truest thing you've ever said on this podcast. It's amazing. It's like I lobbed a softball over to you.
And I just hit that one right into orbit.
You clearly jacked it for 450, you know.
There you go. I hit the red seat at Fenway Park, I think.
You went past it.
Okay, then. Wow. All right.
It's amazing. That's for those of you who don't do the sports ball, that's a Boston Red Sox reference.
Yes.
But here we are, episode 251. We're just past the halfway point in Black History Month as we continue our celebration. Mm-hmm. And what a great response we've had to the first two episodes for the month of February.
It really is amazing. It is. We are so honored to be doing this, and the response that we've gotten just is humbling. It really is, and we're so thankful to have some great podcasters join us for these 4 weeks to talk about things that are important to them. And this week is absolutely no different, buddy.
It's amazing. So week one, we had the Sci-Fi Sisters, who just were fantastic. Mm-hmm. Week two, we had David Majors and his sister Maimuna, and they were so wonderful.
Yeah.
This week, we welcome Lance Laster and Kevonte Chilous from Always Hold On to Arrow, from our friends over at the United Federation Podcast. Now, that's the podcast network that was started by a bunch of people, including our friends Ken Tripp and Brandon Shea Mutala.
Yes,
they have a lot of great content over there, and this Arrow show is fantastic. If you ever watched Arrow on the CW or any of the other Arrowverse shows, I think you'll really appreciate what Lance and Kev do over there.
Well, I got to say, Sue and I are fans of Arrow. We have not gotten all the way through it, but we went through a block of time where we watched a bunch of it, and we love the show. And now knowing that there's a podcast about it, which I didn't know about, makes me very excited. So in addition to just, having them as guests here on the Trek Geeks podcast, I'm going to have to go check out Always Hold On to Arrow to see what it's all about, because I'm sure it's pretty awesome. But they've got a pretty awesome topic this week as guests here on the network.
Today they are going to look at the hallmark episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Far Beyond the Stars. And I am so grateful to have their perspective on this episode. I don't want to spoil anything, but One of them has seen this episode, and the other one has never watched Star Trek before.
Ever.
So Far Beyond the Stars is really his first episode. And so I'm going to let them get into the details, Lance and Kev, as they present the episode for today. But for now, Dan, why don't you present people with how they can get in touch with us?
Well, I'd be happy to do that. St. Patrick's Day is coming up soon, so I'm just practicing.
Like in a month. You got
that
time.
means you got a month of this anyway.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we definitely want people to get in touch with us. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can do that. You can just go to trekgeeks.com/contact, and there you can email us. You can send us a voicemail. You can chat with us. You can send us tweets. You can also go to Camp Kittimer, which is the official Facebook group of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network over on the Book of Faces. It's the most positive Trek group on Facebook. We are proud to say. We don't allow any trolling. We don't allow any gatekeeping. We only want people there celebrating what they love about Trek. So just search for Camp Kittimer, answer a couple of quick questions. We'll let you right in. And as always want to thank our wonderful admins, Haley, Jackie, and Fark, for the amazing job they do running that camp. But Bill, you please got to remember that any comments or messages you leave us at any of these places may be used in a future episode.
I think the thing that scares me is that your faux Irish accent really isn't any worse than some of the people in season 3 of Sons of Anarchy.
There you go.
And some of those are pretty bad.
They're pretty bad, but I'll be happy to do it anytime you want.
Which means I'll never want you to do it again.
Sorry.
Dan, Valentine's Day was just a couple of days ago, but love is still in the air. And I was wondering, are you seeking Jamaharoon?
Not from you. Dude,
why not?
That's just wrong. Anyway, oh my God. But if anyone out there is looking for Jamaharon, you know that you need to have a beautiful Horgon to display, and Fansets has you covered. The very latest pin from Fansets, the Horgon statue from the TNG episode Captain's Holiday, is available right now, so you can share the love, so to speak. The Horgon has been one of the most requested pins for Fansets, and you can get it right now at fansets.com.
I think I am actually one of the people who have requested this pin in the past. So I am very excited by this. This is just one of the unique and great pins that Fansets has in store for 2021. And you want to get yours right now because this one is guaranteed to sell out. So head on over to their site, put a Horgon and a whole bunch of other stuff in your cart. And at checkout, be sure to use this week's special Trek Geeks discount code word Benny. That's BENNY in all capital letters for an amazing 10% off your entire order. Now, this offer is going to be good until February 24th, 2021 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Plus, don't forget, when you spend more than $30, you're automatically going to get free shipping in the United States.
Fansets. Our pins have character. And as always, we thank our friends at Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. So, Bill, Science Division is teaming up with Star Trek Online for a fantastic deal, and this is one that people really don't want to miss.
That's 100% true. We don't want you to forget about this. So, for a limited time, you can unlock free in-game items for Star Trek Online for your PC when you order the Galaxy's first interactive Tribble from Science Division. Using the special offer code, you can unlock the following items. And this is just a huge amount of stuff, buddy. You can get a Rainbow Tribble. What was that? And then a Federation Elite starter pack for Federation aligned captains only. And this grants you access to the following: a T6 Reliant class advanced light cruiser, 12 inventory slots, 12 bank slots, 2 bridge officer slots, a Borg bridge officer, which I think is pretty awesome, 14 Mark II very rare space gear, 7 Mark II very rare ground gear, and a Starfleet Academy uniform.
That's a lot of stuff.
That really is.
Oh my gosh. Plus, you're also going to get $5 off the adoption of your Science Division Tribble. All you have to do is go to sciencediv.com and use the special discount code REBORN. That's REBORN. BORN in all capital letters. And you're going to have to move fast, though, because this offer is available for a limited time and it's good only while supplies last. These codes for Star Trek Online are also valid for the PC version of the game only, so keep that in mind. You can get all the details at sciencediv.com, so head over there and start your Tribble adoption today.
Science Division. Trouble's never been this fun, and we thank our friends at Science Division for sponsoring this week's episode.
Welcome to Always Hold On to Arrow, the podcast that talks about all the things that make Arrow, Arrow. Except for this episode. This is a special episode because today we are going to talk about Star Trek.
What?
Yes. We're talking about Star Trek today, y'all.
You got me. You finally got me.
I finally did it. Y'all.
This must be what everyone feels like when we randomly do Hallmark episodes.
Probably. Oh, and by the way, I'm Lance.
Yes, and I'm Kev, y'all.
Big shout out and thanks to the Trek Geeks, Bill and Dan, for extending an invitation to be a part of what they're doing for Black History Month and promoting the voices of Black podcasters. And they invited us to talk about any topic that we kind of had in mind for this month and in the world of Trek. And I, for the two of us, picked the episode from season 6 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Far Beyond the Stars. I picked that episode for us to discuss, and for my money and in my opinion, it is the best episode of Star Trek, like out of all of the series, and probably my favorite episode of science fiction, period. Kev, you are a brand new person to this universe.
Oh, yeah.
So which is another reason why I kind of wanted to pick this, because it's like, as a new viewer, you're going to have a very interesting perspective on this.
And just to make note here, he's not speaking of like a new viewer to Deep Space Nine. This was the first episode of Star Trek I've ever seen. I have, for some reason, not seen any episodes of Star Trek. I have only seen the 2009 movie starring
Chris Pine.
Thor's in it.
Oh, he's his dad.
He's his dad.
He's Chris Pine's dad.
I did not see the sequels to those.
Okay.
For not for any reason. I just didn't get around to seeing them. Mm-hmm. So this was my very first episode of Star Trek. And although I watched an episode in season 6, episode 13, I believe.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like, I watched this episode earlier today and I've been thinking about it all day.
Yeah, man.
It's pretty insane. I am interested to talk about this. Hopefully I can bring in some new details from the experience of someone who's never seen these shows and even knows who these characters are or about or anything. So hopefully that comes across as at least informative, because this episode is for anyone.
Yeah, so that's it's another reason. One of the reasons why I picked this episode, because it's an episode for anyone. It's a timeless episode. It's a very poignant and prescient episode. Mm-hmm. I think it always will be, and it's good to have interesting perspectives on it. Somebody like a perspective of somebody who is a fan of Star Trek and loves DS9 and loves this episode in particular, and somebody who's just now getting into this universe. So yeah. Let's get it. Let's talk about Far Beyond the Stars.
All right.
So tell me your initial thoughts, like right off the bat.
This episode. Okay, so I teared up during this episode. I was thoroughly entertained, but I was also really sometimes it was a hard watch, not for any like technical reasons like it was bad. Mm-hmm. It was hard because of the familiar feelings that come with the themes and stuff handled in this episode.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to jump right into that. I mean, I'm sure that's going to come out throughout the discussion, but this episode made me tear up. It was well done. I was entertained and I didn't feel lost. Yeah, I had to okay, it took me a little bit to recognize that all the characters were from the show that were also in the 1953 moment, but that's just because I'd never seen them, and half of them didn't have makeup.
Yeah.
So, but not knowing anything about the show, I understood what Captain Sisko was about, what his issue was, what his fears were, and what was driving him throughout this episode. And by the end of it, I feel like I kind of know some of these characters, even though I've only seen one episode of them.
Yeah.
So it's well done. I feel like if we dropped someone in season 6, episode 13 of Arrow, they would probably be lost.
Yes, I agree.
You know what I'm saying?
Because they'd be like, Richard Dragon? Who is this guy?
Why is he here, and why does he talk like that? Anyway.
Why do the longbow hunters not have long bows?
We'll get there, y'all. I promise. But yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. It's funny because when you approached me with this, I was super hesitant because I was like, "Yo, Lance, I don't know if you know this. I've never actually seen Star Trek." And you're like, "No, trust me. Like, you should watch this episode. It's my favorite." You said you thought it was the best episode of Star Trek, and so I think you may have screwed me for the rest of my Star Trek viewing time because I don't think there could be an episode better than this. So
there are tons of good episodes and great episodes, but this one clearly does stand above the rest, in my opinion. And I kind of did start you like at the top of the mountain. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing in this case. If this gets you into it, then I did my job.
Yeah, I definitely, now that I know that all the most of Star Trek is on Netflix, I had no idea.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, Mom, for the password. I'll probably just, kick back and watch some more Star Trek, especially this Deep Space Nine.
For sure. Well, you mentioned how you said that you felt like you knew Ben Sisko right off the bat. So let's talk about him for a second. Ben Sisko is an important character to me, and Avery Brooks is an important character to me as well. On my desk in my office when I was teaching public school, there was like a bunch of other things, but there was one picture in a frame on my desk when I was working, and it was an autographed picture of him.
Wow.
Like that was what was on my desk. Like, not like, what you would think would be on my desk. No, it was an autographed picture of Benjamin Sisko. Okay.
Did anybody notice that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Everybody did. And of course, and you could probably guess what their question was about. Like,
is that your dad?
Yep. Every single time. Every single time.
I'm sorry. I knew it.
But in any case, I guess to give you a sense of what this character means to me, Ben Sisko to me is what John Diggle is to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my dad.
he is like, I thought and have always thought like he is such an incredible role model, and I admired his leadership. I admired the way that he handled his business. I admire Avery Brooks, and the time that I got to meet him at Houston Comic Palooza was probably the most excited I've ever been at going to any con, and I've gone to many. And this is probably the most excited I was in attendance for a con and meeting somebody. I was more excited to meet him than I was Sarah Lance. So y'all know what that means.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, that's pretty awesome because, this seems like, and I'm assuming you watched this on television as it was coming on, or did you watch it later?
Most of it, yeah. And then I ended up rewatching the show in college, and that's when I was just like, oh yeah, this is it. Because, I watched TNG and Deep Space Nine like when they were on, but it wasn't like, I didn't remember everything as well as I do now, so to speak. And they weren't necessarily appointment television for me back then either. It was just like, if it's on, I'm watching it. And so I watched a handful. And that's how most of like my TNG viewing was, like, because I've seen all those episodes, but not in order, which was so weird, which is why I'm appreciating like, my current rewatch of the show now. I'm like, oh yeah, this show is as good as people say, because the TNG is really good. So But yeah, I rewatched in college and gained a greater appreciation for DS9.
Yeah, man, I watched. I sat down to watch this episode, and I really want to focus and pay attention because once again, I'm talking about a show that I've never seen before, which is out of my element. And I began watching this show, and one of the things that I noticed that I did not know before I watched the show that I would be watching a black captain.
Yeah.
I was unaware that had ever happened. I know now they have a black captain in Discovery, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Michael is now the captain of the Discovery.
So I was pretty shocked. I had no idea that he was the lead of the show. And as I was shocked in watching how the episode played out, it made so much sense why that episode is so highly regarded, because it's almost seemed like it was a little meta.
Yeah.
Of what could have potentially been going on the outside of watching this black captain, anchor a Star Trek show.
Yeah, well, that was the the discourse around it when they first pitched the series, and then when they figured out who was going to be the lead, and I'm sure the discourse around it was like a black captain, like what? And here's the kicker. He was not a captain when the show started. He was not he was a commander for several seasons before getting his promotion. Didn't even start the black man as a captain.
Yeah, so and although I haven't watched Star Trek from of any things, I do know that and I've heard people discuss the cultural importance of the first Star Trek. I don't know if it was just called Star Trek. I don't know. I don't know if it had a tagline, but that show depicting a diverse, for the time, crew in science fiction, that was a pretty big deal to begin with.
Correct.
And so after I watched this episode, I was like, I got to find out everything that this guy talked about. And so I looked at him speaking about this episode.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the fact that Star Trek showed people that in the future, black people would still be there. They would be a part of things in the future. And that is such a strange concept that a lot of people probably, unless you are a black person or a minority, you don't understand how significant and how great that actually feels.
Yes.
To have that sentiment displayed. I'm glad that I saw this show as a 32, nearly 33-year-old man than I probably would have as when this episode came out. I was maybe 10, 11 when this episode came out. I would not nearly have appreciated the message of this story as much as I did today. I would not have been brought to tears at 11 or 12. I wouldn't have understood. I would have seen the themes of 1950 and the racism there and said, well, yeah, that's history. Yeah. But now I see it and say, oh my God, I understand his quiet rage that a lot of people don't understand, that a lot of minorities have to deal with.
Correct.
It's so well done in this episode. And by the end, when he finally loses it, I feel like I know every person of color that I know has gotten to that breaking point.
Yes. Of
constantly being pushed, and then finally letting go.
Yeah.
But also how terrifying it is to let that go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this, I am so this episode sold me on why, even if this type of theme isn't hit at all in the rest of the show, which I don't assume it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Because this is season 6, episode 13. I'm assuming this isn't just out of nowhere. But I now am so interested in seeing this character's journey because of who he is in the position that he's in. So it was just, I don't know, man. We all too often throw these amazing, powerful words to things. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But I think watching this episode, I genuinely, when the episode ended, I just kind of sat there for a moment and I said, what an amazing episode of TV.
Yes.
And, I say that about Arrow, but Arrow's fun and action packed. But this show, I don't know, man. I don't know how to describe it. I understand why this is widely regarded as one of the best episodes, period, of Star Trek. But yeah, it far exceeded my expectations. And it's not because it touched on the message of racism and prejudiceness and stuff like that. It's how it was done and what they could have done that would have weakened that narrative, but they didn't. the first thing I noticed was that it takes place on Earth in 19, like, you know, playing it safe. They could have made this anywhere. They could have made some weird culture in some weird planet. I don't know. Maybe it's the thing they do. Once again, I have no idea. Star Trek fans, don't bite my head off. I'm new. And if you want to keep me, I'm telling you, I'm worth it. Don't bite my head off. But, you know, like you get right into it. And, you know, the way to ease into it, he's seeing people. And I was like, what the heck's going on here? You know, like that guy clearly looked like he's from, like when it showed the guy walking by in like the press hat and like the suit, I was like, that definitely doesn't belong on this ship. And then the baseball player walks up. I'm like, yeah, something's definitely off. Yeah. And then suddenly he opens the door and boom, he's back in the 50s.
Yeah. And like there's, you know, the sci-fi-ness of it all, right? Like that transports him to this world works really well for this episode, but also like for people who are watching DS9, this was nothing new because there was this entity that they dealt with the entire show, the Prophets, right? That showed visions to people, and particularly to Cisco, throughout the show, and you know, tried to imbue various messages to him about like what was going on with him that he was struggling with, or you know what other people were struggling with, right? So their presence on the show was pretty consistent to the point where like if something weird was happening and like it turns out that somebody was having was in the middle of a vision from the Prophets, then you didn't, question it. You were just like, okay, cool. We're dealing with the Prophets this episode. They're going to teach us something.
Yeah, I kind of figured something was going on with that because, you know, they kept, his father, who in the past was that pastor or preacher, was talking about the Prophets and stuff like that. I assumed that was something I didn't know about. They mentioned earlier in the episode that his brain scans look similar to a previous episode, I'm assuming, that I had no context to. But episodes. Episodes. So I knew that this is something they had seen before, but it was slightly different. They weren't understanding why it was happening the way it was happening to him in this particular case. But the premise of him being a sci-fi writer, and I remember I was, at this point I still didn't know what was going on. I was like, okay, he's in the past. I don't know what's going on here. And he's working, and even the conversation about the photograph and how they told the female who was writing, she was using like her initials instead of her full name because they didn't want them to know it was like female writing. They said, hey, you sleep in that morning, don't be here for the staff photo. And then, Cisco says, well, I guess you mean me too. And even that, I was like, okay, I understand that. It is a time period. Surely they wouldn't go any further than that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, they're acknowledging that there was some prejudice,
I think that's the most shocking thing about this episode that still gets me is like they really did go in.
Yeah.
They really did.
Yeah, and when they got to the point where he was leaving and the two officers were questioning him, I paused.
Those two are the villains.
They're
okay. Yeah, they're the villains. They're the people they're at war with. They're part of the minions. So you have Wayun, who was the short one, and the taller one was Gul Dukat, who was the leader of the Cardassians.
Gotcha. I thought you said Kardashians, and I was like, what? I was like, okay. No, so when I got to that scene, I paused it, and I was like, oh, Lance, what have you done? You are showing me something that is going to awaken this spirit inside of me that that's the blood of the ancestors rest in my chest. I was like getting bubbled up and watching this.
The Prophets are showing you something, man.
And at that scene, here's something that I think you can relate to very well. That first off, let's not let this be lost upon us, because maybe we got people listening to us that are Star Trek fans. Maybe we have some of our Arrow fans listening to us, and so some people know us, some people may not know us hearing this. Okay,
that's true.
You and I have never formally met. That's probably going to be remedied fairly soon, but we have never formally met. We've grown up in two different parts of this country. You've grown up in Texas primarily. Yep. And you've lived in Philly.
Yep.
I have grown up in Nashville, Tennessee, and I lived a little bit in North Carolina when I served in the Marine Corps. But for some reason, Lance and I have the same experiences.
Yes.
Without ever having to meet. And I've never asked Lance if he had that experiences. I just know Lance has had those experiences. That's a very real thing. And what I don't want to do is push people off to saying no one else experiences trauma or stress or any kind of things like that. I'm not trying to say that, but I do want people to understand that there is a difference in what Lance and I experience that you may not. Not downplaying your experiences, but just saying ours are slightly different. For example, watching this episode and watching this part, and I can share a slightly personal story with this too, just to bring context to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Cisco is leaving his job, and there are two officers who assume that, one, he's not qualified to work there or even wear the suit that he's wearing. Mm-hmm. The property that clearly was his, they're even questioning that it is.
Yes.
And then they mishandle and mistreat him. They speak down to him. They mishandle and mistreat his property and then send him off with a warning as if he should be lucky.
Yeah.
Because
as if he did anything wrong.
Yeah. But the truth is he was lucky because it could have gone so much worse.
That's correct.
So I bought a house in a nice neighborhood in a suburb called Hendersonville out of Nashville in 2018. I did it with my VA loan. Hoorah. I'm a Marine. And I used to get up every morning with a buddy of mine, and we used to go running because we're getting out of shape, and I need to keep my 3 miles under 22 minutes. So I used to go out at about 5 in the morning, 4:45-ish in the morning, and I would sit in my driveway and stretch as he pulled up to come run in my neighborhood. We would switch off. 1 week we ran my neighborhood, the next week we ran his. I have a perfect 1 mile loop in my neighborhood. It's perfect for running if you wanted to get a mile in every day. And I was sitting there one morning, and I have a cul-de-sac that I live in, and there are often that police officers will sit in my neighborhood and just kind of wait there just to take a break. So it's not uncommon to see police officers sit in my cul-de-sac. I got out there one morning, and I was stretching, and I'm in full running gear. I have bright lime yellow shorts on to run in because it's dark and it's morning. I have running shoes, socks, and I have a sweatshirt on. And I'm sitting in my driveway stretching. A police officer comes up to me and says, "Hey, may I ask what you're doing out right now?" And I said, "Oh, good morning, officer. Sorry, I'm stretching. I'm getting ready to go running. I have a friend that's coming to meet me." And he says, "Do you have any ID on you?" And I said, "Well, no, sir. It's in my house. I'm about to go running." And he said, "Which house is yours?" And I said, "The house that's right behind me. I'm sitting in the driveway." And he said, "And you don't have your ID on you?" I said, "No, sir. I do not have my ID on me." I said, "I can go get it if you like." And I started to get up, and he said, "Just sit right there." And there I sat, terrified. I was scared. Now, I am a 6'3", 235, 40-pound combat Marine. And I sat in my driveway, Indian style, scared while an officer asked me what I was doing in my driveway.
Yep.
And I had already explained this to him. This officer is not a bad person. I'm not calling this officer a racist. I'm not calling him evil. He's not the devil. He's a police officer who's working his tail off, and he has a hard job to do. But as I sat there, I was waiting to hear there was some reason that he was suspicious of me. Maybe there was a call of suspicious activity or something. I'm waiting on that. I never got that until my friend showed up and verified that I was going to go running with him. The officer then let me go. My friend happened to be white.
Yep.
That little incident that happened at 4:45 to 5 o'clock in the morning, I got up, I had to run a mile, and then I came home, took a shower, and I went to work. And I worked 8 hours, and I came home, and I sat with my wife, and I had dinner, and I was still bothered and upset by that. That officer may have never thought of me ever again in his life, but I have never forgotten that. So what I'm saying is that when I spoke on that quiet rage, I did not have the ability to respond with the frustration that I wanted to with him because I don't know what could have happened, which is why Cisco withholds himself from being like, "What is wrong with you guys? This is my paper."
Yeah.
That there is more scary than anything else they could have done in this episode for me. That terrified me.
Yeah, man.
And that's why I paused it and I was like, "Oh no, Lance. What have you done?"
Yeah.
You got me triggered? No. So I shared a personal story, not to say, "Oh, woe is me," or cops are evil, because they're not. I worked for years as a warrant officer in a juvenile facility here in Nashville. I have a lot of friends and police officers. I love them. They love me. I support them. None of those things. No, that's not the problem. I'm just trying to bring context to what that scene means to someone who may have watched that may not have been a minority or a black person who's ever had an awkward experience with a police officer.
Yeah.
That was a terrifying scene. And we're only in like the 10-minute mark of the episode.
Yeah, we haven't even really got started.
Yeah. So once I saw that, I realized that one, they're going to handle this material straightforward. They're not going to spoon feed you. And as we watched, you and I recently reviewed Remember the Titans for Mickey's Marbles, and we spoke in that about the racism in that episode, in that movie, and we knew that it was embellished for Disney dramatization. And we could look at some characters and say, yeah, that's clearly probably an dramatic representation of what the person probably said or felt.
Yeah.
What's scary is this did not feel that way. And these movies are set not too far in difference. I think it was 1970 in the 71. So you know, but yeah, that seeing that was just terrifying. But it also had me engaged and hooked because I was hooked on the story. What's going to happen? What are the, I guess, prophets trying to show Cisco right now by putting him in this ridiculous time frame in American history? Because I'm sure, I don't know what year Deep Space Nine takes place in, but I'm sure 1953 was a long, long, long time ago for them.
A very long
You know
time.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
about some, 400 years in the past.
whew, man. But yeah, and it sort of, bounces back between, I guess I could say Deep Space Nine being, Deep Space Nine time in that, but it focuses a lot of its time in 1953. And my God, is, I thoroughly enjoyed the sci-fi writing stuff.
Yeah.
I loved the artist handing him a picture that looked like a pretty close representation of the Deep Space Nine. At least, I think, so that is the space station?
Yes.
Okay, I saw it in the intro. Because they don't really show it in the show. I guess I was supposed to know. I almost skipped the intro on Netflix, but I didn't.
Oh, you
didn't.
almost skipped it?
Well, because I'm so used to skipping everything. I was like, no, I should watch the entire intro.
Okay,
Look, man,
good. What'd you think of the music?
It was better than that one show I told you about. So, little caveat before we recorded, let me correct. This is my first full episode I've ever seen of Star Trek, but I have seen the beginning, about 10 minutes of a pilot of another one. I forgot the name of it. What's it called?
Enterprise.
Was not a fan of that intro song.
See, I wasn't at the beginning either, but I've grown to love it.
It probably grows on. So look. Just when I first watched Always on Smallville. Ooh, man, the show is so ingrained. Shout out to you. Zach. You have made the show name your podcast name in my brain. When I first watched Smallville on my little DVD player in Afghanistan, everyone in my squad was like, "Ugh!" at the beginning intro song. But by the end of the first season, we were all singing it.
That's right.
And now we love it. So maybe that would have happened to me too. But no, I definitely enjoyed it more. So yeah, when he sees the image, he's like, "Oh, I have an idea to write this," and he starts writing what seemed like his story from what they were doing in the show. And so I was sitting there thinking, like, "Oh my God, is this going to be like at the end of the show? They realize that like this character Benny was actually just writing this, and that like was that a glimpse of what the show was going to end like?"
That was a possibility, and they did not go that route, and that's that I guess we could get into that now. I think that is probably the most poignant part of this episode. And I mean, Dr. Bashir even says it. He's like, I think it makes it more poignant.
Yeah.
Because, as Major Kira says, who would be having this dream? Right?
Yeah.
It would be somebody who needs to have this dream.
Yeah.
Oftentimes in the Trek community, the phrase that is said a lot is Gene Roddenberry's vision, which without it we would not have Star Trek.
Okay,
and I get that. And his dream of of a future where everybody's working together, we're all and like all that stuff, right?
Okay,
that is great, but at the same time, I think the reason why they did not go through with, it was the dream of Benny Russell that this was happening. I think that they were afraid of of a possibility of having all of this being the dream of a black man, that like it was his idea,
yes,
right? and having to give him credit for it, and that's I think that's kind of a misstep. It doesn't throw any shade on Gene, but for real though, like who but a minority person or somebody who is downtrodden would have the dream of what the future in Star Trek looks like?
Man, so when they started hinting at that, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing if they show that just Deep Space Nine was like the dream and the writings of a man from 1953 that we met in the show. It turns out actually like that would have. Now for me, it's like I'm not. I guess I'm not the hardcore fan, obviously, but like for me, that would have been incredibly powerful. And
I agree.
And it would. I don't think it would have ruined. Me and my limited understanding. I don't think it would have ruined any of the other Star Treks or anything like that. I think this could have been in the story of like it just it was beautiful.
Yeah,
because we dream.
Yes.
And we have goals and we have desires and we have interest. And as he says, we have dignity. We are human. We can think and create things like that. And me as someone who is desperately trying to write a fantasy novel that I'm never going to finish. It's actually my Twitter handle now. It says I will never finish my novel. I often face the challenge of saying like, I have all these intense and insane ideas in my head, and I just want to get them written out because I want someone to read them so they can know that I dream like this. That this is what I think. This is my interest. That you may not suspect seeing me. So it was.
Or think that you're capable.
Or think that I'm capable.
Which was what everybody kind of did with Cisco. It's just like, Benny, you can't, like, why are you writing about this? Like, Jake, or in this case, Jimmy, is like, he's like, why are you writing about, black men on the moon? He's like, that'll be the day.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, that's not going to happen. But, it's like, you could see, how people thought, like in the prevailing attitudes and what some of the characters were saying and thinking about.
Yeah.
About this.
And the sad thing is, it's not just what some people thought, what some people still to this day think.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this episode hit me so hard, is because we've moved forward in some ways, but we've stayed stagnant in others.
Yes.
And seeing this man write something amazing where everyone says this is great, the caveat is either you wrote it or the hero in this case, which if people will say, well, that, those things won't happen now. Let's just mention Michael B. Jordan being Superman and let's see what happens.
Let's have a live action Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Let's have that. We can't even have that. There's so many things that this kind of touches on. Like, we can't talk about, Michael B. Jordan possibly being a Superman because there is a black Superman. There's two of them, right? We can't have Miles Morales in live action. They did not make toys for Static back in the day when Static Shock was on television because they thought it wouldn't sell. Are you stuff like that?
Yeah.
It's like these are prevailing attitudes, and this is why, as you said, like as there have been strides moving forward, it seems like it's like there's always somewhat of a step back in addition to the moving forward.
Yeah,
which is why it takes so long.
Yeah, and this is just. These things are saying, for example, like Static Shock not getting a toy. Like, for people, these may seem micro, like, oh, these are little tiny details, but they're bigger deals to the target demographic. Like, I don't know what it would have felt like in, I guess, 93 when this show started, to be a Star Trek fan and see this. Like, to be a minority Star Trek fan and see this. You know what I'm saying?
No, seriously, one of the reasons that really drew me to DS9, not only the fact is that there was a black captain, but like his son was part of the crew. Like his son was part of the show, right? And then he ends up having, he gets Penny as his love interest, and you later get Worf on the show. You have a brown doctor, you have a brown first officer, right? Like you have, it's like this. It's incredibly diverse, and not only like the races, but also like the alien races, but also like the people that they cast for the show was, and so that already was inviting. And just being able to see, black love, black parenting, black excellence on TV each week was, it's liberating.
Yeah. I recently had to talk about this to someone because someone was asking me about the term, like black excellence and like what that may mean or what these things mean. And I was like, right now, a lot of your streaming services have like a section that says like strong black voices or something like that, right?
Yes.
All the movies are like slave movies.
Yes, they are.
They're all movies about black people being treated horribly.
Yes.
Or they're about times of black people trying to overcome racism or being oppressed. Or very rarely do you see a movie about, like we said, like a dad and his son, like parenting. Like, as a person who grew up without his father in the picture, because John Diggle is my dad now, you know, to see that on television, as a young man, that would have told me that, oh, dads exist. Dads take care of their children, because I didn't know that growing up. Because every example I had, almost every friend I grew up with that was black did not have a dad around. So just to see these things means so much, and they do so much for the psyche. Like,
yeah,
I don't know how to convey it other than saying the feeling of seeing representation.
A face that looks like yours.
Yeah. You know, I always pretended to be someone that didn't look like me, because all I ever had shown to me were people, the personification of excellence and heroism and everything. They never looked like me, or even my dad, or even my mom. You know, I had to pretend to be one of those characters. When I played with my friends, they got to be those characters, and they would say, "You can't be that character because you're this or you're that."
Yeah,
and that's all kid fun and games, but that bothers you as a small kid more so than you realize. So to watch something like Star Trek, which sci-fi is generally, you know, the stereotype of sci-fi in science fiction, I think of like a 1950s little white freckled nerd with big thick glasses and like a pocket protector. You know what I'm saying? So like science fiction being something that even minorities are even interested in, but even like get into, is just, I'm just grateful for that anyway. I've always been a huge nerd of things. I don't know how I missed out on Star Trek. I don't know how, but you know, these small things are a big deal. And the thing is, like, you know, I don't know everyone's opinion on Discovery. If I base off Twitter, it's like everything else in the world. You either love it or you hate it.
That's correct.
But there is somebody right now, younger than me, or even my age right now, some young woman or some young kid that's seeing their Cisco.
Yes.
And it is elevating their psyche to say, I can be involved in these things. Yeah. And that's important, way more important than people give it credit for. You know,
that's correct.
You know, seeing Falcon possibly take up the Captain America shield and have Captain America being a black man. I know it's in the comics, but to see that on television, high profile, is going to raise the psyche of a lot of people. And those are nothing but positive things, because, like I said, most movies that people like with black people in it are generally about our oppression or about our imprisonment or about our slavery. And it's like, that's great to see what we've come through.
Growing up in the hood, trying to make it out of the hood.
Or trying to make, you know, stuff like that. So it was fantastic to see this, you know, to see this character deal with these things in such a high and mighty way. And by the time he breaks down in the end, you absolutely understand he's exhausted every effort to maintain his dignity without slipping, because here's another scary truth. And Lance can back me up on this. And if I'm saying too many scary things, Lance, please stop me. I don't want to scare off people listening to me, but
I'm not going to stop.
We don't get the opportunity to do that twice. That final meltdown, we don't get the opportunity to do that. Once we've done that, once we have become whatever they want us to be. And the thing, and when I teared up in this episode is after him breaking down, saying things like, I am human, I have dignity, you can't erase what's in my mind. The next scene, it looks like they were taking him to a crazy house. They had him strapped to a table. Yeah. Because the things he was saying was interpreted as him being insane for him to think that he can say those things. And it made me tear up. Because this is the 1998 version of the Sunken Place from Get Out. You know?
I mean, because think about the episode. They he's accosted for doing nothing, right? He has his probably like the pinnacle of his professional career taken away from him. He is beaten by cops in the street for trying to check on his friend who they shot for not doing it, for also, like, you know, the wrong reason. Like he did not have to die. Like Jimmy didn't have to die, right?
Yes, crimes are not usually, the penalty is death.
Yes. So, like he's had like everything taken away from him, and then like when he finally like gets that last bit taken from him, like there's like where else can you go at that point? Like he has no choice but to break down.
He said that. He said nothing like what else can hurt him at this point?
Yeah.
When he was trying, I think they said Jimmy was trying to break into a car.
Yeah.
Right, with a crowbar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy that I feel like to say this, but like even stealing is not punishable by death.
That's correct.
Like so when I hear the narrative, well, he shouldn't have been committing a crime. Crime is not punishable by death.
Yes.
So that's why we have a judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's watching the all too familiar feeling of biting your tongue, holding your energy in, and then that time you finally let loose, and just to be repaid by saying like, it isn't a everyone stood up and clapped for him.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah, well said. You're right. And like the boss didn't say, you know what, you're right, I'm going to fight for your story. Mm-hmm. No, they just submitted him to the hospital.
Yes.
They're like, yeah, you're crazy. Mm-hmm. And that is the dry realism of that is the scariness of that scene that some people may not even catch.
Yes.
Speaking of another movie, more recently that touches this subject, Get Out. You've seen Get Out,
of course.
So
should have been Best Picture.
Are you aware?
Should have been Best Director as well.
Are you aware of the original ending of Get Out?
Yeah.
So I'm going to share it for y'all. If you haven't seen Get Out, I'm going to spoil it.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry for the movie that's 3 years old.
Yeah. So at the end of Get Out, after he escapes the house and he kills the entire family, his airport security friend shows up. My man. Rod makes a joke to break the tension. They get in the car and they drive off.
Yeah.
Even when I watched the movie, I remember saying that's odd that an airport security officer would leave his post, take a company car and all those things like that. Mm-hmm. It is a weird scene. That's because it wasn't the original ending.
Yeah.
If you are unaware, the original ending of the movie, a car does show up, but it's an actual police car with 2 police officers in it, and they just catch our hero, our main character, choking the life out of this woman covered in blood. And he goes to prison.
Yep.
Because no one believes what he says.
Correct.
Because the house caught on fire and burned down all the evidence. Mm-hmm. All they see is a black man and a bunch of white dead people.
Yeah.
And sure, you would say anyone would assume that thing. Mm-hmm. But that's the scary part about it, is that he wasn't in the wrong.
Yeah.
And because of what it looked like, he goes to prison. And that is a bleak and depressing ending, and it probably would have made audiences feel really crappy.
Yeah.
But that's the most powerful ending, and that is the most honest ending to the story you could have had.
It's true.
I wish they would have done that. Not to make everybody feel guilty, because it's not our job. It's not our hope and dreams to make everyone who doesn't understand us feel guilty. We just want to be understood and heard. That's all.
That's true.
So in this story, you have a writer who feels like he has to work twice as hard to break even. Mm-hmm. He writes an excellent story that everyone says is fantastic, the best thing they ever read.
Yes.
The only problem is your main character is black. It's not that a Negro wrote it, as they keep referring to.
Correct.
Because they can mask that. Mm-hmm. No, people didn't even know that he was black.
That's correct.
It's the fact that the character is black, and no one in society would accept that there's a Negro captain of a starship. And just
as like, they, back in that time, and, unfortunately now, like people still have trouble accepting the fact that there are black CEOs, black presidents, black, what fill in the blank. We're still having to have first, like, the first, black person to do blank. We're still having that, right?
Yeah,
and so,
we're still having that.
So back, like, 1950, 53, like when this is taking place, they could not fathom the fact that it's like a black man couldn't create this, nor can a black man be a captain of a starship or a space station in a story that he wrote. Like that's preposterous. And it's like, man,
the author should not see himself in the character at all.
Yeah.
And it's something, and I'm not going to quote it correctly because I forgot exactly what he said, but his editor, his boss says something like, "I'm not here to try to change how things should be. I'm just here to deal with how things are." Mm-hmm. And that is one of the scariest sentiments
Yes.
I can hear about anything.
Yeah.
And he's working against everything, and the joy that he had when they devised a plan to be able to make. And first off, the poignancy of making the story be a dream. Mm-hmm. It does make it powerful because it's showing the readers of 1953 that, hey, black people dream too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people didn't see black people as humans. Mm-hmm. They saw them as, whatever.
Yes.
And to say, hey, we dream just like you do. Mm-hmm. We bleed just like you do. We care. We love. We cry. We feel. Everything just like you do. But even that was just like, you have to have a caveat to be accepted.
Yes.
It's not what you did was good enough. It's like what you did was good enough, but we got to make a way to make it acceptable for everyone else. Mm-hmm. In my family, we call that code switching. You know what code switching is? I can be the best at what I do, but I still have to mind the way my mannerisms are.
Yes.
And the way my speech comes across, or even my demeanor. Mm-hmm. People find me intimidating because I'm 6'3" and I have dreadlocks. And if you've hurt me at all on this podcast, I'm a big friggin' goober who's in love with his wife and has 6 babies that I deal with all the time. I'm like I'm like the most pacifist combat vet you ever meet. But I'm constantly having to let people know through everything I do, I'm not intimidating. I'm not scary. Listen to me downplay my combat experiences. Listen to me downplay my size, And there's always that slight caveat that has to be done to make things palpable for people who may not be ready for you.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people have to do that. But I don't think people have to do it to an extent to where it determines whether you are not accepted. Successful or just not successful, accepted. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm saying. Watching this as an adult man who has had some experiences in the military, which in the military, in my corporate job I have now, there's some things that I've experienced that I did not handle them as gracefully as Cisco did. Mm-hmm. And, I wish I could have seen this character before, like I said, I appreciate it now as an adult, but I wish I could have grew up with seeing more examples of things like this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we don't know how to respond to these things. And that's why we see a lot of rage in our community because no one's ever really given us a blueprint of how to deal with these things.
Yeah.
And if you say, hey, if you want to look at people that have to really deal with being told no or they can't do something for the first times in their lives, we're kind of seeing a lot of people act out in this country now.
Yes, I know.
Seeing people do things like try to overthrow a Capitol, trying to occupy government buildings because for the first time
they heard
in
the
their
word
lives, they've heard the word no, or you can't, or this isn't allowed, or you can't go here, or, mask only, which, my grandmother would tell you about some science she had to deal with growing up here in the South.
Correct.
So,
Mine too.
So it puts a perspective on where that time frame was like in 1950s, but also it's just as suitable for 2021.
Absolutely.
And I love the meta-ness of it because, like I said, not even knowing the context of the show, I already knew that when he's referring to the fact that a black man can't be a captain, he's talking about his own character in his own show that he's been leading now for 6 seasons.
Yeah.
This wasn't done in episode 2 to let people know, hey, it's okay for me to be captain. This is episode 13 of season 6.
Yes.
Where he would probably still hearing those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we need to make a message about this now.
Yeah.
Much better message than 6 seasons in suddenly talking about gun violence, right?
Ooh, boy. We gonna get there, y'all.
But yeah, no, this was an episode done right. As someone who's watched a lot of CW shows, which I have a joke for CW after a certain season of Arrow, which becomes Channel Woke. CW stands for Channel Woke.
Yep.
To see it done incorrectly or not as well as they intended, I'm not gonna say they're doing it wrong because they have good intentions. They're just not they could have used a Cisco to direct their episodes.
Yes.
Or to have some input in it. Because this is a well done episode that is strict and serious, but it's presented in that palpable way where it can be handled and discussed and respected instead of just being tossed off as that's the episode where they talked about racism. So I don't like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
To see everyone say this was one of their favorite episodes really made me feel good.
Yeah.
After also saying, I think this is my favorite episode. You know, it sucks. You know, like I like Avengers: Age of Ultron. Apparently, I'm not supposed to, but you know, so it's nice when you like something and everyone else likes it too.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
That affirmation feels good.
You know what? I kind of like Age of Ultron too, especially given current events.
Dude, I watched it recently, and I was like, this isn't a bad movie.
Yeah,
it's not.
Yeah,
it's not a bad movie. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all good. But back to this, you know, the Star Trek. I guess to wrap up here, you know, I think one of the best things that is mentioned here at the end is when he's in the ambulance and you know, and the preacher's dad is just like, he's like, you are the dreamer and the dream. Right. And so Benny, you know, again, Benny Russell is dreaming of a future where, like, you know, he does not have to, you know, deal with what he's currently dealing with.
Yes.
And the dream realized is Ben Sisko.
Yes.
You know, and that's just like, I love it. And then it reminds me of the, you know, the Arthur O'Shaughnessy poem that, you know, that is a song that was made into a song that is in my fraternity's, you know, songbook, you know, in it, you know, that poem, we are the music, it's called Ode, and it's like, it goes, we are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams, wandering by lone sea breakers, and sitting by desolate streams, world losers and world forsakers, on whom the pale moon gleams, yet we are the movers and shakers of the world forever, it seems.
Hearing
good stuff, man.
Yeah, hearing his dad say that at the end reminded me. I was fortunate enough to get to know my great grandmother. She passed a few years ago. She almost made 100. She was almost there. And if she was alive, she would have. If she was able to say it, she would have said crap at the end because she didn't make it to 100. She was very excited about making it to 100. But my family, I was born and raised here in Nashville. My family is from a plantation in Mississippi. It's a little town. It was a plantation that's become a town now called Hollandale.
Okay.
And my great grandmother would share stories about her grandmother, who was a slave. And she told me something that I'm sure is not original. I'm sure you can find it. I don't know where it came from, but she told me something. And I share it with my kids all the time when we're getting ready to go present ourselves in the world and represent the Chilous family, because one Chilous can ruin it for all Chillouses. If you don't think you can ruin a name, Hitler ruined every Hitler. Manson has ruined every Manson. So, you know, you can ruin and tarnish a family's name by all the good work people put into you being there. But the point I'm trying to make is that she would tell my grandmother, who's told my mom, who's told me, who I tell my kids, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams.
Yes.
They could not fathom what we have now. My great grandmother would have laughed if you would have said one day your great grandson is going to own a house and not be enslaved, and he's going to have a bunch of beautiful kids, and he's going to have a good job. Like, those things would have been her wildest dreams. So with that notion,
likewise for my family, like, you know, me playing, you know, playing trombone in a professional orchestra
and doing it well too. I've seen the videos. I've seen the videos. My little 7th grade trumpet guy yields to your music. Okay. But so it's, you know, it's I love that universalness of that experience. You know, this was made in 1998.
Yeah.
But here we are in 2021 saying similar things, feeling similar ways that we've been told. You know, you are the dreamer's dream. You are your ancestors' wildest dreams. You're owed. It's just like, that's pretty special.
Yeah.
Almost, dare I say, mystical, you know?
Yeah.
And
it's of the prophets, man.
It's of the prophets. And that is why I don't think I can ever watch another episode of Star Trek, because I won't like it as much as this one. No, you know what? You know, I do want to watch Star Trek. I do want to watch Deep Space Nine, and I want to watch, I guess TNG is the one with Picard, correct?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I do want to watch that because, I mean, Jean-Luc Picard, I've seen enough memes of him. I want to see what his show is like.
He's fantastic.
Good.
In that show. Like rewatching it, like as an adult, like you really get to see and appreciate like how great he is and how great Stewart is in the role. He's fantastic.
I can't wait. So yeah, you guys got me hooked.
I'm glad.
And give me some more suggestions of things to watch. I mean, apparently Star Trek is pretty, it's a pretty big franchise. I hear they got a couple shows.
It's a pretty big deal.
It's a pretty big deal. So part of the big lexicon. I grew up thinking like I had to like Star Wars and like I couldn't like the other guys. But
you can like both.
I know. It's crazy.
I know, right?
It's crazy. Man, I love being an adult.
I know, right? All right. So I guess one final word of business here. We're giving this a bullseye, yes?
Yeah, this is absolutely a bullseye. Because it made me laugh, it made me think, and it made me cry. And if I can get that in 40 minutes, that's a good time.
Absolutely.
So
for sure. Cool, man. So, once again, thank you to Bill and Dan for allowing us to talk a little Star Trek with you. This is a nice little reprieve from our normal dealings when we're dealing with the Arrowverse. But if you want to hear more of us talking about all the things that make Arrow, you can find us on Twitter at Do Not Fail Our Pod, and we are part of the United Federation of Podcasts. You can find us at UFP Earth on Twitter, and you can find me personally at Sir Lance Laster on all my social medias. Kev, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at ChillUs. Is how you pronounce my last name. It's CHILL_US on Twitter. And you'll see me there talking about Arrow, K-pop, and the Tennessee Titans. Because that's pretty much my life.
All good. We enjoyed it, y'all. So hopefully we'll see you guys out there on the internet.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for giving us the opportunity to talk about something a little different and stretch our wings in a different way. I really enjoyed it.
So, buddy, first off,
wow,
grateful thanks to Lance and Kev for their episode on Far Beyond the Stars today. This is an episode I just watched the other day on BBC America because it was on, and it's completely gutting and gut-wrenching and emotional. And today's episode gives me completely different perspective on it that I just couldn't have appreciated before.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think has been so important about what we've done here this month with Black History Month and getting these discussions from these podcasters. And it really does make you open your eyes. I'll tell you, this is one of the perfect examples. We saw Let This Be Your Last Battlefield back in the 60s. But the way that Avery was able to direct this episode and really make this message come through in Star Trek makes it one of the best episodes ever in this universe. And the fact that he didn't even see this was the first episode of Star Trek to ever be watched. What better idea could you start with than Far Beyond the Stars?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this episode is Star Trek.
Yeah.
And it is presented so uniquely in comparison to the rest of Star Trek that it's sad to say that it's timeless because we should be well past these things by now.
True.
And it is so perfect. And to watch our regular cast members step outside of their characters and be these other, persons inside of this Deep Space Nine episode. I was watching Renee, and it's hard not to get choked up because Renee is just so good in this episode.
I love his character. And even though it total sideline of the conversation about the true meaning of this episode, but with Renee, he's trying to pass the buck off to the boss, but he's kind of such a slime ball the way he does it.
Yeah.
But it's so great the way he does it. And one of the things that I love most about this episode is the people that we see covered in latex all the time, not covered in latex, and being amazing characters. Renee, Aaron, everybody, JG, they're all of them. Jeffrey and Mark and Dorn, they're all just great out of their normal makeup element. Not to say that any of the ones that don't wear makeup were awesome, because they're all awesome. There's nothing to dislike about the episode except what you said, the fact that we haven't grown beyond this kind of crap. and people still have to deal with it. But it's done in a way that is just absolutely perfect.
The scene where Benny is getting beat up by the cops.
Mm-hmm.
I sat there sad and depressed because it looked like something from this past summer.
Exactly. I was going to say it's George Floyd. And
Yeah.
and this is why it's so great that we've been able to have people like Lance and Kev on to talk about this and get that perspective that, quite frankly, like you said, you and I don't really understand.
We'll never have. We
and
will never have this perspective.
Exactly. And I can't thank them enough for doing it and sharing, and hopefully everybody can listen to this and get that understanding and help to make this go away forever, because it's got to go away.
Our sincere thanks to them. And we really want you to check out their podcast, Always Hold On to Arrow, over on United Federation of Podcasts, because they are two fantastic podcasters that you should be listening to. And we hope to maybe we'll get to do a crossover with them someday. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. Could we talk about Arrow
or Star Trek, one of the two, or both?
Oh, that's true. Yeah. How about an Arrow Star Trek comic book crossover series? I'll start working on that.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Of course, Dan, we have to thank our friends, the band 5 Year Mission, without whom this podcast would have no music, and that would just be sad. I would cry.
I would cry.
I would be inconsolable. So we want everyone to head out to 5yearmission.net, get all their albums, put those CDs in your cart, get them shipped to you, have that physical media in your hands, because that's the best way to show support to the band. Streaming is nice, but come on, bands don't make anything off of that. Instead, get that media, show the band you love them. You're going to become a huge fan of 5 Year Mission. We guarantee it. 5yearmission.net. Go get all those discs.
It's all worth it. It's so worth it. You can spin it on your finger. You won't be able to hear anything, but it'll look really cool.
What is wrong with you?
And you know what though, Bill? You know what's wrong with me? The fact
wait, that's a completely separate podcast. I don't think we have time for that.
Wow. Anyway, rake on my face. Okay. We have not talked about the TV or the spectacular CBS All Access program, Picard.
I'm sorry, I'm dying over here.
He is dying. He literally is. But we've never talked about Picard in this segment of the show, and that's disappointing. Until now.
Is it?
Because I got to say, man, this was great. The La Sirena crew headed off to Free Cloud as they continued their search for the galaxy's most beloved drummer. Things got a little dicey and they got a little weird too, because we saw Rios doing his best impersonation of Huggy Bear from Starsky and Hutch. That was pretty cool. Picard looked like he took a page from Miles O'Brien's holodeck character Falcon from Our Man Bashir. You may remember that. They did find the man that they were looking for, but he seemed to have gotten himself into a little trouble with the local mafia queen, Bajazel. Everything was going to plan until 7 of 9 decided to reveal her true intentions. Check it out, buddy. It's Fark Dusk City Rag, and it's right there for you to watch.
Is Fark Dusk anything like Fark Dust?
Did I say dusk?
Yeah, it sounded like that.
I think I said, it might have just been the clicking, because I think I said it right.
Okay.
Fark Dusk City Rag.
That doesn't make it any better.
It's just the way that it comes out of my yammering hole.
Hashtag yammering hole.
So anyway, Fark Dust City Rag.
Yeah. I think in the pantheon of Farkisms, this one is the 251st.
Oh, that bad?
Yeah.
Not as bad. No, last week's was bad.
Last week's was bad. That apparently you apparently wanted to go even lower.
Wow.
And put in as little effort as possible, because that's how we get Fark Dust City Rag.
Well, okay then. I will work harder next week.
I find that difficult to believe. Don't forget that you too can support the Trek Geeks Podcast Network by subscribing to us on Patreon, where you can get all kinds of special and exclusive perks, Daniel.
Shirts, pins, maybe a guest spot here as a not a co-sponsor, but a co-host along with us two malcontents. I don't know. You just got a whole bunch of different things that you can do. And we're going to have new things coming out this year, I think, maybe.
Malcontents?
Malcontents. I said it. Anyway, but we can't talk about that right now, Bill, because I'm very busy. I have to thank our associate producers for Trek Geeks. We are so grateful for their support. And they are Vikram Bhatt, Luke Burnham, Brad DeMag, William Edward M. Jr., Brandon Everidge, Andy Fark, Kimberly Francis, Jonathan Hamilton, Ryan Jeffs, John Krikorian, Sean Lynn, Rick Mason, Jamie McGregor, Aaron Mollenkoff, Casey Pettit, Tim Robertson, Greg Rozier, Eric Sakian, Adam Sanders, Tim Serdar, Heather Sohn, Blake Strike, Lisa Tomlinson, damn you, Bill, Jessica Dax Vincent, Ron Robel, and the gracious and wonderful Conrad Hutchins.
The best part that people can't see is we try to get each other to crack up while we read the names. And that's just, I was just horrible this week. We also want to thank our Trek Geeks producers for their support. They are Mike Bovia, Chaz Bradshaw, Ken Bird, Kyle Castillo, Peter Craig, Craig Ewing, Jackie and Chris Hackney, Kimberly Hartman, David Hood, Leonel Marchand, Matt McGonigal, Jim McMahon, Darren Metcalf, Charlie Mulvey, Sean O'Halloran, Jamie Rogers, Casey Shafsky, Chris Trabuzio, Ken Tripp, Christina Werther, and the lovely and talented Jess Vashon. The senior producer of the Trek Geeks podcast is the always amazing Jude Tatman.
You too can become a producer on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, and it is so easy to do. All you need to do is head over to patreon.com/TrekGeeks for all the details.
Next week, Dan, we'll have the fourth and final guest podcasters for the month of February as we wrap up Black History Month, and this one's going to be awesome, just like all of the other ones.
Yeah, that I have no doubt, Bill. We've been so honored and blessed to have all of these guest podcasters on the show all month long. We started with the Uhura, and it seems only fitting to end with a discussion about the first African-American female captain represented in Star Trek. It's a discussion of Michael Burnham with the Black Alert podcast, and it's all right here next week on Trek Geeks, the flagship of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network.
Now, before you get emails, you mean the first series regular African-American?
I was trying to figure out a way to say that, and I really couldn't come up with it, so you did for me.
I just want to make that clear.
Absolutely,
because
there's been plenty, but this is the first time it's been the focus.
First time we've had a series lead.
Spotlight, right. Exactly. Because I was trying to figure out how to word it in because she was originally not captain, but then she was, so whatever. Oh, by the way, spoilers on that whole captain thing.
Spoilers after the fact. Great job, buddy. For even more great Star Trek discussion, please check out the other member podcasts of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. In addition to Rewind and Politrek's 5-Year Mission, you can also hear the brand new Deep Space Pride with Mike Thurlow and Johnson Lee, as well as Infinite Trek with Aaron Harvey and Brandy Jackola, The Divine Treasury with Mike Bovia and Jamie Rogers, and of course, Sci-Fi Sisters with that amazing collection of women that have come to our network, and we're so happy to have them. You can find all our podcasts, including Where to Listen, by visiting trekgeeks.com/listen.
The Trek Geeks Podcast Network. No one talks Trek like we do.
And of course, for all the news on all the Star Trek show, please visit our great friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode number 251 of the Trek Geeks Podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
It is coconut. It's coconut.
Is it real, though?
Oh, nicely done.
Because coconut shouldn't be real. Coconut's horrible.
Oh, yeah.
Music for Trek Geeks is provided by 5-Year Mission. They're writing an original song for each episode of Star Trek. Hear more of their music at 5yearmission.net. Trek Geeks is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network at trekgeeks.com or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
looking at